Hello! You are watching The Web Demystified. In the previous video, we applied CSS styles to our online store. In this video, we'll explore the basic concepts of CSS, including selectors, the box model, the display property, and inline styles. CSS is a cascading style sheet that is used to style HTML elements. Just like HTML, which is used to create the structure of a web page, CSS is used to style the elements of a web page. CSS allows us to control the layout of multiple web pages simultaneously, saving us a significant amount of work. A common misunderstanding is that CSS is considered a programming language, which it is not. It describes how HTML elements are to be displayed on screen, paper, or in other media. Nowadays, CSS is the only way to style HTML elements. In the past, there were other ways to style HTML elements, but they are no longer used. For example, the font tag was used to change the font size, color, and other properties of text. The font tag is no longer supported in HTML5, and it should not be used. Instead, you should use CSS to style HTML elements. CSS is an easy-to-learn language, and it is used by all modern websites. Before we dive into CSS, it's crucial to understand inline styles. Inline styles provide a method to apply styles directly to HTML elements. Here's an example of what inline styles look like. Here we have a simple HTML document with just a paragraph. We can style any HTML element using style attribute. Now, let's use style attribute to style our HTML element. This style attribute can contain any CSS property. For example, we can add property color with value red, and now our paragraph will be red. And also, the style attribute can contain multiple CSS properties separated by semicolons. For example, let's add also font size property and set its value to 20 pixels. And now let's make the text bold. To accomplish that, we can use font weight property with bold as value. Inline styles are easy to apply, but they have some disadvantages. First, they are not reusable. If you want to apply the same style to multiple elements, you have to repeat this style attribute for each element. Second, inline styles are hard to maintain. If you want to change this style, you have to change it in every place where it is used. Third, inline styles are not easy to read. If you have a lot of inline styles, it is hard to understand what they do. Also, if you are using inline styles, you are mixing HTML and CSS codes, which can lead to a mess in your code. For these reasons, inline styles are not recommended. Instead, it's recommended to use internal and external style sheets. This is what the SS and CSS stands for. To get rid of inline styles, we need to move our styles to a separate file where we can manage them. So, let's consider an example of a simple HTML document that contains a header, some paragraphs, and a list with links. We are going to style this document using CSS. And to start using CSS, we must first create a file that will contain our CSS code, which we'll call style.css. This file must then be linked to our HTML page. We can accomplish that by using link tag with several attributes, rel attribute, style sheet, and href attribute set to style.css. Now, to be able to see both the HTML and CSS code at the same time, I'm going to split the editor into two parts. And at this point, the HTML elements are displaying with the browser's default styles, as we have not yet added any CSS code. So let's fix that. Every CSS file is composed of one or more CSS rules. A CSS rule consists of a selector and a declaration block. The initial part of a CSS rule is the CSS selector. It is used to identify HTML elements based on their ID, class, type, attribute, among other things. The selector is always followed by a declaration block. The declaration block contains one or more declarations, separated by semicolons. Each declaration includes a CSS property name and a value, separated by a colon. Now we need to discover how to apply styles to multiple elements. This means we want to match CSS properties with HTML elements by their tag name, class name, ID, etc. and apply styles to them. To do that, we need to use CSS selector. To start, we'll style the entire document by setting the font size and font family. We can use HTML element selector HTML. It's an element selector because it selects a tag with name HTML. So we can add the property name, font size, and set its value to 20 pixels. Also, let's set font family property, and the value is sans serif. Sans serif is a generic font family name. Let's add color property and set its value to #333. It's a dark gray color, #333. And next, let's change background color. We can add background color property and set its value to F5, E5, F8. It's light purple. Also, you can see that while we specified the font size and font family just for the HTML element, all other elements on the page also have the same font size and font family. This is because of inheritance. Inheritance is a mechanism that allows elements to inherit properties from their parent elements. In our case, the HTML element is the parent element of all other elements on the page. So all other elements inherit properties from the HTML element. This is why all other elements have the same font size and font family as the HTML element. Some properties are inherited and some are not. For example, the font size and font family are inherited, but the background color is not inherited. If we want to set the background color for all elements on the page, we have to specify it for each element separately. And the most complicated property in the example is the color property. It's inherited by text elements, but not by link elements. So, let's have some fun and add more element selectors to our code. First, let's underline all H1 elements. We can accomplish that by using text decoration property with value underline. As you can see, our H1 tag underlined now. Also, let's change font style to italic. And now let's make all paragraphs bold. Font weight property, bold value. And also we can make all links blue. Our link has a tag, so we can use a, set color to blue, and for example, let's remove the underline. To do so, let's add text decoration property and set it to none. As you can see, now our links are blue and there is no underlines. But it's inconvenient to use element selectors because a single tag can appear multiple times on a page, each instance potentially requiring a different style. To solve this problem, we can use ID and class selectors. So let's start with ID selectors. In this example, you can see an h1 tag with an ID attribute with value SUMID. We can use this ID to style h1 tag without mentioning the tag name. For instance, to make the text color brown, we would add the following CSS: SUMID and set color to brown. And note that the ID selector starts with a hash sign, and the ID value must be unique on the page. While it's not a major issue, if you have multiple elements with the same ID, it's still considered a bad practice, and it will render the HTML document invalid. ID selectors are good for styling a single element, but what if you want to style multiple elements? Every element can be marked with a class attribute. In our example, we have a p tag with a class attribute with the value blue, and another p tag with a class attribute with both green and alert, and also an ordered list with a class attribute with the value links. We can use these classes to style these elements without mentioning the tag names. For instance, to make the text color blue, we can add the following CSS: period blue and set its color to blue. Now this paragraph is blue. Similarly, to make the text color green, we would add the following CSS: period green, color green. And note that the class selector starts with a period. Also, you can notice that the second p tag has two classes, green and alert. We can use both classes to style this p tag. So let's add a red line to the left of every element with the alert class. To do so, we can add period alert and add border left property with value 5 pixels and solid red. Also, let's add some padding to the left to make the text look better. Padding left 10 pixels, for example. Yes. Now also let's add third paragraph, and also we can add class name alert. And as you can see, same classes can appear multiple times on a page, on a single page. Styles will be applied to the both green alert, this paragraph, and this paragraph as well. But in the future, you may want to change the colors of your website, and you will have to change the color names in all places where they are used. To avoid this, it's recommended to use semantic class names. Semantic class names are class names that describe the purpose of the element, but not its appearance. For example, instead of using the class name blue, we can use the class name primary. Instead of using class name green, we can use class name success. Primary, and let's change here to success. Also, here primary and success. It's much easier to manage semantic class names because you can change the color of your website by changing the color values in your CSS file without changing the class names in your HTML file. And combinators. we can use multiple selectors to style elements. For example, we can style our list items like this list items. We can add unordered list, period links, angle bracket list item. And inside it, we can add list style type property with something like this inside as value. Here we've used two selectors, unordered list, period links, and list item. The first selector selects all unordered list tags with a class attribute with the value links. The second selector selects all list item tags. The angle bracket symbol is called a child combinator. It selects only those list item tags that are direct children of unordered list tags with a class attribute with the value links. And also, let's make the links bold. To do so, we can use different approach, unordered list period links, and we can use a tag. And let's add font weight property with bold value. Now our links are bold. And in this example, we've used two selectors, ul period links and a. The first selector targets all unordered list tags that have a class attribute with value links. And the second selector selects all a tags. The space between the selectors represents a descendant combinator. This combinator selects all a tags that are descendants, not necessarily direct children of unordered list tags with a class attribute with value links. And you can create more complex selectors by combining multiple selectors. Pseudo-classes are used to define a special state of an element. For example, the hover pseudo-class is used to apply styles when an element is hovered over. Let's make the links red when they are hovered over. To do so, we can add a hover, and let's add color property with value red. Now let's check if it works. It works, great. Another example of a pseudo-class is the first letter pseudo-class. It is used to select the first letter of an element. So, let's make the first letter of a heading red and a little bit bigger. This letter. We can accomplish that by using h1, double colon, and first letter pseudo-class. Let's change color to red. And also let's change font size 50 pixels. There are many other pseudo-classes like active, focus, visited, first child, last child, nth child, and many more. You can find a full list of pseudo-classes on the Mozilla Developer Network website. Thank you for watching. In this video we learned about inline styles and the different types of selectors in CSS. Goodbye and stay tuned for part 2 of this series.